Hello everyone, welcome back to Olmzara's Com. This is part one of a three-part video of the Quilt As You Go. That's what I'm working with today, so stay tuned. Let's see how it works. So welcome back everyone. So if you are like me, you have pieced blocks. As you can see, my pieced blocks lying on my floor. I had dreaded the fact that I would have to sew these into a queen size quilt and to make a quilt sandwich and to quilt these together. So I decided to invite you to join me as we work on the Quilt As You Go. And I know I'm not the only one that have pieced blocks ready to be quilted. So let's see how I went about to turn these blocks into a quilt as you go. So the first thing I did was to prepare my blocks. Most of the time your block should be starched pretty stiff, and I decided to come along and make a quilt sandwich. My quilt sandwich consists of the back of my quilt, which is a flannel fabric, the batting, and my pieced block. This is what will make a quilt sandwich. Now I'm showing you my feathering design that I will use around the block, but that's the first thing you want to do is get all your blocks together and make a quilt sandwich. I have 42 blocks. So again, you have your pieced block, you have your batting in the middle, then you have your backing, which is the back of your fabric, and I'm using flannel. Now I am going to pick out some quilting designs to practice. This really helps you guys when you have an idea of a quilting design that you're going to do and you get in and you practice, you become familiar with that design, and it makes it easy to maneuver under your machine because you know pretty much how it works, the direction it's going. I'm using this feather. As you can see, I got confused of where I wanted to start, but in a quilt you're going to do continuous, so you're going to stay on one line, and this practice here really helps you get familiar with that. So get out your marker and some paper and practice some designs. Pick out some quilting designs that you know will complement your quilt. The next step is to set up your sewing machine. You have all your quilted blocks ready. You made them into a sandwich. Let's set up our sewing machine. As you can see, I have get your sewing machine, clean it out, dust it out, oil your machine. Some machines take oil, some don't. I have a multi-purpose colored thread. I have my stippling foot and my walking foot. I have filled up several bobbins. I've cleaned my machine. This button right here, it drops my feed dog. I am familiar with that. I have also made 3 extra practice blocks to get to practice on my machine. The first foot that I will be using is the walking foot. This is a good choice to make at the beginning if you're a beginner or you're advanced. The walking foot helps to shift all 3 layers of your fabric together at the same time. And I'm using my walking foot to just lightly tack down my block. Now, you can use your walking foot, and this is one of the ways to quilt your block and you're done. But I wanted to tack down my block You don't have to quilt, use your walking foot to stitch every seam, but you just want to do a good portion of it to secure it down. Also, so this is I'm stitching in the ditch. This is a familiar term that all it is doing, you're trying to aim your needle in between the seam there. And as I'm stitching in the ditch, I'm flipping my block over to make sure that my tension is right. Always check your tension, because this is a practice block. We can get out, iron out all the kinks of this stitching in the ditch and making sure your tension is right. And pretty much, again, if you wanted to stop right here, your block is quilted and you're done. So if you had 42 blocks like myself, you would quilt stitch in the ditch and your block is quilted and you can move to the next step. But I will be adding some feathers and other designs in my block. Also, very important, please leave a half of an inch to an inch a measurement around your block to account for your folding over and everything. So here is I still have my walking foot, and what I want to do is to put in some gradual curves for the vein of the feather. Now, you may not be having a feather, you may have other things. You can use this design in many different ways, but I felt that the walking foot gave me an even stitch, and it made it easy to do. If you're doing a feather like me, you want to aim your vein to be in the middle of the section that you will be adding your feathers to, because you need to make room for your feathers on both sides of the veins. Here is a look at my stitching and how it's looking, and this is the final block of the quilt. As you can see how the feathers are looking, and they're not covered by the sashing strip. So the next thing I did was to put on my free motion foot. So we've done the vein using the walking foot. Now we're using our free motion foot. Now this is where I found to have a lot of the problem of getting my tension right. It took me several days to get the tension right. Now some machines are very picky with thread and the tension and the bobbin, so this is an area where you want to practice. The next thing I did was to get some grippy gloves. As you can see, they really help to grip your quilt. Now during the springtime in the 99-cent stores, you can find these beautiful garden gloves that you can buy for 99 cents, and they will help you to grip your quilt block better. Because I am familiar with my designs, I know what designs I will use. And here I am quilting this C. It's shaped like a C into this particular area. Now, I have quilted a queen size quilt before and a king size quilt on this little machine you see right here. It is very doable, but I have found that as time goes on, I've been noticing I have a lot of stress and tension with maneuvering such a large size quilt. I do not have a quilting, what is that, the big quilter machines, the long arm, And I am a person that has the mind to try to use what I have. So in that mind frame, I decided to go with the Quilt As You Go. I am just quilting one block at a time. I find it very enjoyable to twist and turn this block. I don't really sense the tension or the stress of turning the whole quilt. I find it very enjoyable again, quilting each block using the Quilt As You Go method. Now, if I had a large quilt, as I did that turn right there, I would really have to tug around and pull this quilt around just to make that turn. So there is an advantage in doing the Quilt As You Go method for quilting each block. And because I have 42 blocks, I began to get in a rhythm that made this very enjoyable. And I have my blocks stacked right next to me, and once I finish one, I do the other. And the method that I did, again, I started with my walking foot first and quilted all of my blocks with my walking foot. Then I changed my sewing machine to the stippling foot and did all my blocks with my stippling foot. You do not want to keep changing from foot to foot. It does not make it reasonable to get finished like that. So you want to plan out to do all your blocks with your walking foot and then switch your feet and do all your blocks in that way. And the most part that I had a difficulty time with was to get my tension right using the free motion foot. This particular free motion foot, your tension is built on how fast you maneuver your block under the needle, and you want to get into a rhythm. That's why I say make extra blocks to practice your free motion foot, and it's different for every machine, but once you get that in, you will be happy you did. And this is how my stitches are looking on the back, and you can see the free motion quilting that I did here. And you can see I did have still some difficulties with some of my stitching tension, and as I went on along, it got a little better. And I like I'm gonna say, sometimes your tension has a lot to do. Maybe you need to clean out your machine. There's dust here and there, or it's the needle or the thread. So you have your 3 extra blocks to practice on and iron out the kinks. Now, as you can see on this block, I did not leave much room around the feathers to have another block be prepared. I want you to really be aware of that. Leave an half of an inch around your block. You can almost leave up to an inch around to prepare for your sashing as we do the Quilt As You Go. But this is how the block is looking. I am very happy. What I had decided to do was to bunt each block together and do a zigzag. But once I saw, after I put the feathers on, the block began to look more elegant, and I decided to do the Quilt As You Go in that way. So I hope that you have enjoyed this first section of the Quilt As You Go. Please stay tuned for part 2, where I will be sewing the blocks into a row and the rows together to make a quilt. So thanks for joining me, and stay tuned for part 2 of the Quilt As You Go. This is Olmzara's Calm saying bye-bye for now.